Alright, so today I'm going to be looking at one of the strongest decks in Pauper at the moment, which is basically a Boros aggro value type deck. So basically at the heart of the deck is artifacts like Experimental Synthesizer, which generates pseudo card advantage. So Experimental Synthesizer, it's one of the cards from Neon Dynasty that had the biggest impact on the Pauper meta. So it's 1 red mana for an artifact. It says when it enters or leaves the battlefield, exile the top card of your library. Until end of turn, you may play that card. Then it also has pay 3 mana, 2 colorless, 1 red, sacrifice Experimental Synthesizer, create a 2/2 white samurai creature token with vigilance. So basically this artifact, along with Ichor Wellspring, which is very similar, 2 mana for an artifact when it enters the battlefield or leaves the battlefield, or should I say is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. So we want to use effects that basically bounce Ichor Wellspring and Experimental Synthesizer back to our hand so that we draw more cards off the Wellspring and get more card advantage off the Synthesizer. So the creatures we have doing that is first up Kor Skyfisher, one of the best cards in Pauper as well. 2 mana for a 2/3 flying. When it enters the battlefield, return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. So that's meant to be a downside because this is quite an aggro body. But in this deck, that actually becomes an upside because we bounce Ichor Wellspring or Experimental Synthesizer to our hand, amongst other things. Okay, also helping us bounce these artifacts back to our hand is Glint Hawk. Very similar to the Skyfisher. It's 1 white for a 2/2 with flying, so a very undercosted, highly aggressive body. And it says when it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you return an artifact to your hand. So here again, we're turning the downside of these aggro cards into an upside. Then we're also playing Thraben Inspector, 1 for a 1/2. When it enters the battlefield, investigate. So we can also bounce the Inspector back to our hand and then recast it to get more clues. Okay, one of our other threats is good old Seeker of the Way. It's 2 for a 2/2 with prowess, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it gains lifelink until end of turn. So this has synergy with us bouncing these artifacts back to our hand and then recasting them. I should quickly go over the lands. They're quite standard for a Boros deck, playing 20 lands, 3 Ancient Den, 3 Great Furnace, so we have a little bit of an extra artifact strategy going on. 3 Boros Garrison, 1 Lorehold Campus, 4 Windscarred Crag, 3 basic mountains, 3 basic plains. Okay, then in terms of pumping up the team, we have Rally the Peasants, which is also a very, very good card. It's 3 mana for an instant, 2 colorless, 1 white. Creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. But what really pushes this into the solid category is the flashback. It has a flashback cost of 2 colorless, 1 red. So we get double casts out of this as well. Then we're also running Kuldotha Rebirth, 1 mana, red, sorcery. Has an additional cost to cast Kuldotha Rebirth, sacrifice an artifact. And it says create 3 1/1 red goblin creature tokens. So this is pretty cool with all our little artifacts that we have sitting on the battlefield. We can turn them into more value with this. Similarly, we can also sacrifice our artifacts to Makeshift Munitions. This is a 2 mana enchantment, 1 colorless, 1 red. It says pay 1 generic mana, sacrifice an artifact or creature, deal 1 damage to any target. And in terms of burn, we're running a full set of Lightning Bolt and a full set of Galvanic Blast. So there are many ways to build this strategy. The list I'm playing right now was actually played by an online player called Eduardo Bianchi. But yeah, there you have it. This is sort of the Boros value mid-rangey aggro deck at the moment, which is one of the top decks in the meta. I would highly recommend that you give it a try. And as always, if you've played this deck, please share your thoughts on what cards worked for you and how you might make it better. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.